All right, it is the B Block Podcast. I am your host, Brandon Scott, and I appreciate you for joining me. If you're listening on the audio platforms only, I want to encourage you to check us out on the YouTube page. That is the B Block on YouTube, the B Block with Brandon Scott on YouTube. And if you're on YouTube and want to catch us on the audio platforms only, you can find the B Block Podcast wherever it is you get your podcast. And man, look, y'all know what we are here for. Y'all know exactly what we're here for. We are here for what I am calling one of the more exciting moments. And I would say one of the more, I would say one of the better moments in Texans regular season history. It's the second largest comeback in franchise history from down 19. They were down 19 to start the fourth quarter. And somehow, and y'all are going to see this on Tuesday. So we've had a couple of days to digest this and like start to believe that what you saw was real. I am still days later. I am still well over 24 hours after the fact, still in disbelief in what I saw from the Texans on Sunday. And it's not because they weren't, I didn't think that they were good enough to beat the Jacksonville Jaguars or because I felt like they were outmatched by the Jacksonville Jaguars. I actually think that if you go back and watch, and I did do that, you would be shocked to see how the Texans found themselves down by as many points as they did and being dominated in the fashion that they were, given the fact that they were playing against a team that just was not all that impressive. They were pointed out on a broadcast. Ian Eagle and J.J. Watt pointing out how the Jaguars weren't really moving the ball all that great. The Texans were doing a good job of either forcing 3-and-outs. In the case of, late in the first half, Derek Stingley gets that interception that I think saves what could have been at least a field goal drive for the Jacksonville Jaguars to end the half, and then it ends up not being that. I thought that the Texans weren't being nearly as outplayed as it looked like they were based off of the scoreboard. And even with that, as they started to make their comeback and as we started to get toward the end of the game and this thing looked real, I still could not believe what I was watching. And look, part of that has to do with the fact that this is the second largest comeback in franchise history. So it was literally not something that you see very often. Like just by definition, it was not something that you see very often. But then on top of that, just the feel of it, when you combine like not just the entire franchise history, but how about we just go to the recent history of just this year? It just does not feel like this is a team that's equipped to be on the right side of that type of game, right? Where the team is dominating on the scoreboard for much of it, and then the rally comes. They don't seem like the team that is equipped to rally to even get in the game the way that they did, much less have they felt like a team that would win a game like that in the end. Now, they were having a lot more success on third down, and you saw they were able to make some things happen in the red zone, especially with that pitch to Woody Marks. I know a lot of people were looking at that thinking, man, where was that at last week when y'all tried to ram British Brooks down the middle 2 times in a row and it didn't work and it never seemed like a good idea from the time that you did it. But this was different. And look, I was I was shocked. I was shocked that they were coming back in this game. I was one of the ones who was saying, and I did not, full disclosure, I did not go to this game like I normally do. I'm normally at every home game. I was a little bit under the weather. So I took this game in from home. In the beginning, I was glad because, who wants to waste their time with a blowout game, with one of the teams being one that looks like if they lose, they're not going to be a factor at all, and that being the Texans. As it went on, I was still glad that I did not go because since I was at home, it meant that I did not have to abide by press box decorum, if you will. I did not have to withhold any kind of emotion or sound or anything. I just could just react in real time the way that I actually wanted to. And so that part of it was refreshing. But based off of what we've seen from the Texans offense throughout the season, especially leading up to this game, we talked about it to death. The third down efficiency or lack thereof, and the inability to not just score in the red zone, but to even really get there in the first damn place a lot of times has been an issue for the Texans. And so you think, okay, they maybe they can win a close game if things go their way, go correctly. If the game is close and it comes down to a field goal or comes down to a final play or comes down to a defensive stop, maybe they can win that kind of game. But once they get, down 19 points, a team that can't really operate consistently on third down or in the red zone doesn't sound like a team that's equipped to respond in that way. And I'll be damned if the Texans were not equipped, because they absolutely were, man. They absolutely were equipped. Davis Mills, like I'm I have not been here for a lot of the conversation about Davis Mills and like the fake quarterback controversy that people want to kind of put out there. But I don't feel like we got to make this conversation be any weirder or bigger or different than what it was. Your backup quarterback came in there and did the thing that the backup quarterback is essentially paid to do. And Davis Mills is a handsomely paid backup quarterback now. Like he is a quarterback on his second contract and got his second contract on the strength of being a solid backup. And I would say he earned his salary in one day. He earned his check in one day by essentially helping the Texans save their season. And that's really my first thought on the game, is that the combination of Danielle Hunter on defense, 3.5, 4 sacks, whatever it was, multi-sack game, 3+ sack game for Danielle Hunter. A couple of times where he just completely dominated. Like, you got the sack total, but don't forget the tackle for loss, where he snuffs out a run play and then comes with a sack on back-to-back plays toward the end of the game to really help you get in position to move down the field. And Davis Mills, man, going out there and doing his job, doing exactly what the backup quarterback is called to do. And look at these third down numbers. Who are these Houston Texans? Who exactly is this Houston Texans team? We'll break down a couple plays in a couple moments, some stuff that I want to point out in just a second. But I want to look at these stats for the worst, one of the worst, if not the worst, red zone and third down efficiency teams in football. 10 of 15 on third down. All right. They converted a fourth down out of 2 tries, and 4 or 5 in the red zone. 4 or 5 in the red zone. Who are these Houston Texans exactly? Man, look, this is the most encouraging part, is that they were able to do the things, not just win the game, but do the things that they had not really shown themselves able to do in previous games. Now, where do we want to begin? With Davis Mills, let's start with the Davis Mills performance. Shaky early helps dig them into the hole of 10-0 by throwing an interception on like the third play of the game. And look, this was noticeable. The reason why people were leaving NRG Stadium early, the reason why Iron Eagle and JJ Watt were awkwardly trying to point out how pitiful the offense was, like it just wasn't coming together. They did not have it early. They did not have it early, and Davis Mills specifically did not have it early. It just did not The offense did not flow. His accuracy was touch and go. It just was not there. And then in the second half, and I think he pointed this out in the post game press conference, how they only really had the ball once in the third quarter. But once they got it and once they got rolling, they were able to get into a groove. Now, I'm pointing out Danielle Hunter and Davis Mills. I think that some of it is obvious. I mean, Danielle Hunter has 3.5 sacks. He, helps them. Yeah, well, it was Will Anderson with the sort of game clinching play at the end where he gets to the quarterback and then Sheldon Rankins gets to take it back for the touchdown as time expires. But it was Danielle Hunter who was causing hell pretty much the entire game on the defensive side. And of course, everybody's going to point to Davis Mills out there replacing CJ Stroud, not playing due to a concussion. But I don't want the I don't want the shuffled offensive line to go overlooked in all of this. I felt like the shuffled offensive line gave the Texans their best offensive line performance yet, especially in that second half. Davis Mills, I thought, was fantastic, especially in the second half. Really doing a good job of kind of righting the wrongs. But I would say this is my big thing on the Davis Mills stuff. Like, I'm not here for the quarterback controversy. I'm not here for the should they start Davis Mills over CJ Stroud and all like that. That kind of talk is actually crazy. And I hate that I even acknowledged it here on this podcast. But I will say that Davis Mills is a couple of things. Poised, all right, poised and tough as nails. And he always has been, even going back to his rookie year and the second year when he was the starter in 2021 and 2022, when it was the Davis Mills show. It wasn't always pretty. They didn't win a whole lot of football games. I'll be damned if you could have called Davis Mills either a punk or a soft or anything close to that. Because one thing he always has been tough as nails, resilient, and the dude does not rattle. He does not rattle. Does that mean he always makes good decisions with the football? No. Does that mean that he's always entirely accurate or that his feet have never gotten choppy in the pocket? No. But just in terms of his overall demeanor and like next play approach, the body language, which is a big topic, I know with CJ Stroud, like all of those things are exactly what you want in your quarterback, even if the talent isn't necessarily full-time starter level or franchise quarterback level. So I would say that about him, and I think he deserves that type of credit and deserves to be celebrated for the moment that he helped engineer for the Texans without us going way too far with it about what it was and what it means and what it should mean and who should be starting and all that. We know who the starting quarterback is of this team. Don't be ridiculous. Just be happy if you're a Texans fan. Just be happy that you got a reliable backup quarterback, somebody that you can at least trust to go in there in a pinch and give you the type of performance that Davis Mills ultimately gave you. But to my point about the shuffled offensive line, because Danielle Hunter and Davis Mills are like the headliners in all of this. Davis because of the scramble, go ahead touchdown that is the highlight of the game. Of course, Danielle Hunter sacks could be some of the highlights of the game. Derek Stingley Jr.'s interception at the end of the first half, toward the end of the first half, the one-handed grab, jumping the route, one-handed grab. I think Kamari Lassiter probably did the best job. Y'all can go find that. Kamari Lassiter in the locker room probably did the best job of describing that moment. But there was some unreal. Even on the other side, the kid that's from Fort Bend, Travis, that was catching the passes for Parker Washington for the Jaguars. Parker Washington's touchdown early in the game, that toe tapper. Uh Dalton Schultz had a couple of of highlight reel catches, of course. And I'll mention Nico Collins in just a moment, but he had a couple of highlight reel catches. But Danielle Hunter and Davis Mills were basically the highlights of the game, unless you key in and focus on this weird, odd, continuously shuffled Texans offensive line, and nobody can quite figure it out. I know everybody that's had a chance to get a crack at this has talked about like the odd decision to put old buddy whose name I can't even pronounce because I didn't know he was on the team and never seen him. The former Patriots offensive lineman that started for them a couple of years ago, coming there out the practice squad and was starting for them at guard. I believe at right guard, if I'm not mistaken, or was he at left? See, I mean, I was confused when I saw him out there. I remember telling my girl, like, look, I follow the Texans as closely as anybody, and I don't know who that is. I've never seen that person. I've never seen that person. I don't know how they're even on the team, much less starting in this moment. And maybe it's my fault for not going to enough training camp practices and really taking attendance like I know some of my peers do. But I had never seen this cat. And there he is out there starting for them at guard in a gotta have it game with their backup quarterback out there and a backup right tackle out there, or a right tackle who hadn't played in Trent Brown. Trent Brown, old veteran Trent Brown, mammoth of a man out there. I don't know if y'all could fully appreciate the size that the Texans had at tackle between Trent Brown being 6'8", round about 400 pounds, and then Ariante Ursery on the other side is like either 6'6" or 6'7", and not too far off from what Trent Brown is, but can move a whole hell of a lot better because he's a whole hell of a lot younger and hasn't played as much football. But Trent Brown, for somebody who can't move worth a damn, was show out there giving them what I thought was a hell of an effort for somebody that haven't played football in a long time and is coming off a patellar tendon. Like, I watched him in practice earlier in the week. I watched him try to move around, and he was giving it his best. But man, he just was not moving all that well. And it maybe part of it is because he's a big old injured dude, or a big old dude coming off of an injury. But I was not optimistic about that. I did joke with a couple of my colleagues about, man, what if he goes out there and gives you the best offensive lineman performance that you've seen from a Texan all year? He didn't quite do that. I think maybe Ariante Ursery did. But Trent Brown went out there and played a serviceable right tackle for you, and also allowed you to keep Blake Fisher in as that extra offensive lineman for those jumbo sets that they like to run. And sure enough, that proved to be really important. Everybody's going to key in on the catches and the throws and the sacks, but that offensive line on the game winning drive, like on that long ass game winning drive that they went on, the one where Davis Mills ultimately gives you the 14-yard scramble to take the lead. I mean, they start that drive. I'll even pull this up to make sure that I'm not speaking out of turn, but they start that drive with like 3 or 4 consecutive runs that are we could even go before that, right? The play that D'Amico Ryans and others have cited as the one that sort of shift the energy in the game, where they kind of really knew that they were in it, and that was the Jaden Higgins touchdown, right? That gets them helps get them close to within, what, 5 was it at that point? But that drive there was like, it wasn't just that one play. That drive was impressive because of how they ran the ball. How they ran the ball is what I thought was most. Maybe I'm talking about the drive before the yeah. It's the drive before they yeah, because the Schultz touchdown is the one that makes it 29-24. My bad. So it's the one, yeah, it's that in the third quarter, early fourth quarter drive that I'm talking about, okay? That I'm really trying to key in on. And really both of those drives where the run game is really where it's at. Let's go to the the Jaden Higgins drive, right? Where Jaden Higgins scores the touchdown. They get the 2-point conversion, which I'll mention in a second, to cut the lead to 29-18 in the fourth quarter, early in the fourth quarter. They start that drive, and I feel like people are forgetting this. Start that drive with a 19-yard Nick Chubb run. Okay. Now, mind you, the drive starts at the 35 because it was a touchback, right? So you're getting pretty decent field position in comparison to years past for a touchback. You're starting at the 35, and they get a 19-yard run from Nick Chubb. And look, it ain't just Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb shows burst that I don't think he's been given enough credit for this season. I feel like for a good bit, ever since Nick Chubb got here, or ever since training camp when we saw Nick Chubb, it didn't necessarily look explosive, but maybe we didn't have the best appreciation for like what makes Nick Chubb, and that's like stuff that you can't necessarily see in practice. But he didn't look great in practices early on. Kind of came on a little bit there in the preseason, but it feels like at every turn people have tried to make an excuse, or maybe not an excuse, but like like a reason to discount Nick Chubb, or like, oh man, it's old version. It ain't the same old Nick Chubb. Man, he looked about as fast as I ever seen him look, or at least as quick and sudden as I can remember seeing him look on that 19-yard run. Okay, Nick Chubb did not look old or injured on that run. It sets them up, I think, like as a tone setter for that drive. And not just Nick Chubb, but the offensive line. It's another one of those where they got Blake Fisher out there, and the offensive line, the way that they attack double teams, you would sometimes see a Scruggs Andrews double team. You would sometimes see a Patterson Andrews double team, a Scruggs Trent Brown. Like they worked double teams and got to the second level, or at least pushing the the Jaguars defensive line so far past the line of scrimmage that these guys had room to work before they even had to decide what hole they were supposed to hit. They were already 2 yards, 3 yards past the line of scrimmage. So you get that 19-yard run. You get an incomplete pass, and then you get it to Dalton Schultz for 6 yards, get it to Jalen Noel for 4 yards, and you're in the quarter. But then you come back, another really good Nick Chubb run on first down for 6 yards with Blake Fisher back in there reporting as eligible. Okay. So like that to me, those runs were like tone setters to me. Completely tone setters to me. And then you continue with more, I think, more run plays. Let's see. Am I miss? I might be missing this. Let's see. Long story short, the run game was good. The double teams were really good. The guard play, once they got rid of the experimental dude that nobody had heard of or knew about, and kind of committed to Jared Patterson and Drew Scruggs as the guards, and of course, Blake Fisher out there as the sixth offensive lineman, and kind of just went with that as their lineup. It went up from there. It pretty much mostly went up from there. So I know that there's a lot of kind of uncertainty at left guard. I'm kind of confused on how we're just now seeing Jared Patterson, given the issues that they've had at left guard, and then especially once the right guard goes down. Like, I get how Ed Ingram had his job locked down, but if they didn't have a whole lot of confidence in Laken Tomlinson or Juice Scruggs, I'm surprised that we didn't see Jared Patterson before now. I'm surprised that it wasn't like automatic that he'd be the left guard if Juice had to play right guard. So, but it looks like they figured that out. The shuffling part didn't matter. What mattered was the offensive linemen that were out there once it was nut cutting time, and the ones that were out there performed. I mean, that is the moral of the story. I think that, like, a big thing from last week, from the previous week, especially with those red zone plays or those goal line plays that failed with British Brooks. And a lot of people were upset with how, the coaching staff, namely D'Amico Ryans, was adamant that in this game, in football, like, this ain't for the faint of heart. It's painful in here. And it come down to beyond just scheme and the chess match between the cat and mouse game between the two coaches and the play callers or whatever it is. Like, it does come down to a certain point of, can you kick the guy's ass that's across from you? Or at least in some cases, it's not always can you kick his ass. Can you at least not get your ass kicked? Sometimes that's what the play calls for. But it's a mano kind of game, especially when you get down to the goal line. And so while I didn't like those plays that they called a couple of weeks ago at the goal line, I did understand their logic of, man, if we can't get a yard, why are we here? What are we doing? What is this about? I said this on the live last week. Like, you can hate that approach and hate that mentality, but that's about as far as it goes. I'm not gonna say you hate football if you hate that approach, but that is just you hating reality. Because there is a reality to that. If I can't move the man in front of me, like, ever, or in these pivotal moments, we're not gonna be good. We're just not gonna be good. And they were able to do that. They were able to do that to the tune of, what did they get? 130 yards on the ground. I mean, like, and I feel like it was really later in the game when all of that started to kind of come together. So the shuffled offensive line, long story short, the shuffled offensive line really came up big, and I thought it was the best offensive line performance that we've seen all season. Now, I want to mention Nico Collins as well, because I thought in this game he reminded people exactly who he is, right? And maybe the last time that this happened was the Titans game, because you had L'Jarius Sneed talking about how he had and talking about who was Nico Collins or whatever it was that he said, and then Nico went out there and made plays against him. But the 7 catches for 136 yards, and he didn't get a touchdown, but he had the 2-point conversion. A couple of these catches, man, and the 2-point conversion is one of them. He had another one that was like over the middle, I think, later in the game. They were reminders of the superstar status that Nico Collins has right now. And I think because his numbers have been down and the Texans' overall offensive numbers have been down, their overall offense period has been underwhelming. They just have not been a noteworthy team unless you're a Texans fan or unless you cover them like I do. Like, unless you're in Houston, they're not a noteworthy team or a team worth talking about the way that they were 2 years ago, and then even last year coming off the year before. But when you're coming off of a disappointing season, and then the next one after that, it seems like it's going to be even more disappointing. It was almost like out of sight, out of mind, and Nico Collins is kind of just, with the offense not really doing much. It's like people kind of forgot. I don't want to say forgot, but just don't really talk about it as much. Talk about him as much. Guy's a superstar. Dude is a number one wide receiver. Everything that you saw over the last couple of years, he showed you why we know his name now, why he got a new contract, why he's actually underpaid now. Like, I thought this was a huge Nico Collins game, and it was really cool, when we talk about Davis Mills stepping up, to see those two guys be able to reconnect. You know, I thought that in their first 2 seasons that, the team overall wasn't very good, and I don't think really gave them much of a chance to succeed, especially as young players. But Nico Collins struggled to stay healthy. Davis Mills basically ran out of time because he wasn't good enough in that second year. And then here comes CJ Stroud to take over. But these two guys came in together and played a lot of football together in their first couple of years, at least when Nico Collins was healthy. And so it shouldn't have really surprised anyone that a more experienced and presumably improved version of Davis Mills would be able to connect with Nico Collins. I did think that back when he had his chance to earn that starting job or keep that starting job, he didn't do enough of connecting with Nico Collins. Sometimes, sometimes even for a big tall ass Nico Collins, the ball was too high, and it just overall wasn't good enough. But these guys came in together at a really rough point in the franchise's history, and has been able to see them go from, like, imagine all the guys that were on the team in 2021, and for these guys, for that to have been their first season with the team and to be where they are now, or to see what they've seen over the last couple of years and have the expectations that they have, and then to be a part of the group, be key pieces in what actually saves the Texans season. I thought that was pretty cool. Now, I want to point out that this quarterback controversy that people want to talk about is stupid. Okay. I said earlier, like, I hate that I'm even acknowledging it, but I've seen enough of it in enough places that I feel like it's something that I should at least address, because anybody that interacts with this podcast is probably going to bring up, somebody at least that interacts with this podcast is probably going to bring up, hey, what do you do? Do you rest CJ, or do you think Mills is better than CJ? Do you think they could have won this game with CJ? And that type of stuff. And I'm like, man, let's not do that, man. Let's not do that. I feel like CJ Stroud he's had some bad moments, but he's had enough really good moments, enough great moments to not do this, to not be prisoner of the moment and have to, like, shit on one guy to praise another. You can appreciate what Davis Mills did without going the extra mile on this. You can be critical of CJ Stroud without pretending like Davis Mills should take his job. I don't know why we got to go to all of the extremes when it comes to this. It seems pretty unnecessary to me. But there is no quarterback controversy. The only quarterback question is whether CJ Stroud is healthy enough to play. And if he is it safe? Is it safer to rest him and rely on the backup quarterback that just showed that he could win you a game, do that against a team that he's beaten before and that is probably the weakest on your schedule, to do that and allow your starter enough rest and enough healing to be ready for what you anticipate is the start of your new season, right? Because, and this has been pointed out, I was checking out the locker room with Landry earlier, or I should say later on Monday, where he was kind of just laying out how, you got a lot of middling teams, a lot of 5-4 teams around there, whereas you are 4-5 and are expected to win this game against the Titans. You got a lot of 5-4 teams that could lose this weekend, and you could be sitting right there at 5-5 with everybody else in your entire season, or at least the rest of your season in front of you, kind of controlling your own destiny. And oh, by the way, you do have 2 meetings with the Colts that could really, I think, depending on, it's funny because, like, the Colts, every week we're like, man, they keep winning. I keep holding out hope that the Texans can somehow hawk the Colts, or at least set it up to where those 2 games are important. I don't know. Maybe not. But that wild card is alive, though. To kind of stay with the conversation, that wild card is alive and well. If you win this upcoming game and maybe even get some help elsewhere. But there is no quarterback controversy who should be the starter. It is, how do you manage the second documented concussion protocol situation of your young quarterback? I think that part is really, really important. So, look, this was This was a great win. Again, I want to acknowledge Davis Mills, Danielle Hunter, Dalton Schultz, Nico Collins, the Texans offensive line that was shuffled and not whole by any stretch. You had a dude out there playing for the first time off of a torn patellar tendon. You had Jared Patterson like knocking the cobwebs off, going out there and making it happen. And they gave you the best that unit is giving you all year. Gotta acknowledge them. I want to acknowledge Derek Stingley Jr. Like, I think as impressive of a play as it was to pick that ball off, and picking Trevor Lawrence off is kind of like his thing. He, like, I don't know, gets off on that, I guess. But like, aside from the impressive nature of the play, like, it mattered. It mattered. It stalled. Like, I know they didn't do anything to end the half offensively, but it stalled. Not stalled. I mean, it straight up ended their drive. And I think they could have at least gotten a field goal right there. And at that point, it seemed like you needed every point. Seemed like you needed every point. But yeah, man, this was a fun. Going back to my early, I do want to reiterate, man. I don't think that anybody should feel any shame for being shocked, for any kind of lack of belief. All right, like, I don't begrudge anybody for that. Y'all have to forgive me on the stream for trying to adjust my camera. I didn't realize that camera had tilted like that, and you couldn't even see my last name on the jersey. Forgive me, audio only audience, uh for pointing that out. But I noticed it in real time. Um, Look, I did not believe. Like, think about it. The Davis Mills drive, or the Davis Mills run, where they take the lead. How many times did it feel like that was not going to happen? Mind you, that's a 14 play, 93-yard drive that took 5 minutes and 39 seconds off the clock. But y'all remember how that drive was? Well, first of all, there were a couple of moments where Davis Mills should have thrown an interception, and he was fortunate. Like, if Newsome has the ball skills of Derek Stingley Jr., there's a chance that we never get to see the Davis Mills heroics, because he picks off one of those passes. That definitely happens. Definitely happens. Might even have been the play right before. If I could be remembering incorrectly now, but it might even been the play right before he scrambled. Like, it was that touch and go. That touch and go. So remember, you get a false start. The defensive pass interference sets the ball up right there on the 2-yard line. It looks like everything's good, right? You've shown an ability to make things happen in the red zone. You've shown ability to make things happen on third down. And finally, right? And then they get that false start on Trent Brown. And that's when I started thinking, uh-oh, here come the Texans that we have grown accustomed to. Here it comes, right? So you get that false start. Then you get a negative run. Okay. You get a negative run. You go back a couple of more years. So you go from the 2 to the 7 because of the false start. Okay. Still first down. No biggie. Then you get a negative run. So you go from the 7 to the 9. So now in 2 plays, you done went from the 2, and instead of scoring the touchdown, you at the 9. You at the 9. It's 2nd and 9 now. Or, it's 2nd and goal from the 9. Not ideal. Not great. What happens after that? Y'all remember? You get another false start penalty. I feel like that one was on Ariante Ursery. The game file says it was on Patterson, but it was definitely on the left side. I feel like it was Ursery. But you get another false start. Now you're back at the 14. And it feels like at that point, that the thing is happening that happens to the Texans. Okay. So now you're at the 14. It's all good. You still got, at least you got downs on your side. Distance, you didn't screwed up distance royally, but at least you got downs on your side. A second down. Pass incomplete to Nico Collins. Pretty decent play by the DB. Um, yeah, and so that's actually not the play that I'm talking about then, because that wasn't almost picked off. I'm talking about the drive before that where he kind of floats one and Newsom should have caught it. And if he does, it's a wrap. But anyway, pass incomplete, third down, and it's like, okay, they never do this. They are never the team that comes back historically. And specifically, or specific to this year, they do not appear to be like to look like the team that's built to come back. Certainly not the team that's built to make things happen in either third down, key third down situations, or the red zone. Davis Mills, 14-yard scramble, stretching to the pylon. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Like completely going against the sort of MO that's been established of the team. Maybe these are new habits that they're establishing. We've seen CJ Stroud be more aggressive in using his legs. That's part of what got him concussed to begin with. So look, this was cool. This was cool. Maybe even you might say antithetical to what you understand the Texans to be right now. But could it be them turning over a new leaf? I mean, we shall see. They certainly have a really cool opportunity, I think, going up against the Tennessee Titans. They can get back to 500 in a really crowded field of, let's say, mediocre AFC teams. And to be clear, they would be included in that bunch. And, and not just that, they should be glad to be called mediocre at this point based off of how they've played offensively at various points of the season. But an elite defense, a championship level defense that we've been talking about since the offseason, it has played out that way. Certainly a championship level defense, I feel like, has bought them time. Their championship level defense has bought the Texans time to sort of figure things out offensively, find their identity. Nick Calian finding his voice and getting his footing as a play caller, right? Working through these injuries or performance issues that they have on the offensive line as they try to piece together an offensive line. CJ Stroud adjusting to the increased responsibility and role that he has within the offense. Oh, Davis Mills has to come in there and play for CJ Stroud because he's concussed. Like the offense, oh, who are our running backs exactly? Like the offense figuring that out. Look, the defense has bought them time to try to do that. And I don't know if I finished doing when I was doing my shout outs again, the running backs, Woody Marks and Nick Chubb, the running back that we talk about all the time because he's a rookie and it's exciting to do that, is Woody Marks. And certainly he's the more, let's say, electric back of the two. But y'all let me know if y'all disagree. I saw somebody asking Landry about Joe Mixon and or do we have an update and when are we going to get an update and when is Joe Mixon going to come back? Am I crazy for like at once acknowledging that Joe Mixon is a completely different level back of what they have right now, but also I'm pretty good with what they got in terms of running backs? Like the Nick Chubb, it's not the Nick Chubb Woody Marks combination as much as it is Dari Agumbawale on critical third down situations and people knowing that you're not going to hand him the ball, that he's in there for pass protection, for to either protect or to be a check down. And so you treat it that way. You treat it in kind. Like it's a telltale. it's just too predictable whenever he's out there. That's the running back issue that I got. And it's not a personal Dari thing. It's just that they know. Seems like it's pretty easy to predict how that play is going to go if he's out there. But between the Woody Marks, Nick Chubb, like the Georgia natives combination of running backs that they got, I don't I don't I, I don't feel bad about that. I don't feel bad about that. So I feel like you could do a lot worse than that. And you see what it could look like when an offensive line does the exact things that D'Amico Ryans was talking about in the previous week that everybody wanted to kill him for. Move the man in front of you backwards. Move him that way. One of the reasons why I couldn't play football. I'm just not built like that. Big enough, strong enough. It's not my thing, you know. But if you fancy yourself as a football player, you fancy yourself as an offensive lineman, this what's supposed to be what you do. Move the next man backwards that way. And they had so many more plays that were like that against the Jaguars. It was real encouraging to see if they're able to find that to dig deep and do that on a consistent basis. They can be the offense that they've been talking about being all of this time and just haven't really shown themselves to be. So yeah, Danielle Hunter, Davis Mills, Nico Collins, uh, Dalton Schultz, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, the running backs, Woody Marks, Nick Chubb. Shout out to the offensive line again. Uh, Derek Stingley. How about Azeez Al-Shaair knocking down, batting down a Trevor Lawrence pass? Like you had, okay, of course, let's go Will Anderson and Sheldon Rankins to shut it down once and for all at the end. Just an overall, how about picking up Tremont Smith, who, fumbled a kick, like how about Matt Wright coming in there and being able to do his job for Kaimi Fairbairn, like just an overall team win that you got to appreciate and got to respect, and you can just call it for what it is. You can just call it that, call it for what it is, appreciate it for what it is, and hope that they have found something that they can build on. That's what I'm looking forward to seeing, because I said this on the radio last week that if they won the game, their season is still alive. If they lost it, it is not. And it was as simple as that. Like, never mind the nuance. It was as simple as, hey, win the game, season is alive. Lose the game, season is not. They won. Now they got the title. We excited about that, man. I did not get to the Rockets comeback. Really cool day. But I kind of quit a little bit watching the Rockets. I had my eye on the Texans, but still watching the game on the screen, and I'm like, damn, I'm not gonna switch back to the Rockets. Small for me. But they also came back, and against what I think is an even more worthwhile opponent, one that's actually at least won a championship before in the Milwaukee Bucks. And like, yo, shout out to the Alper Şengün's and Reed Shepherds and Kevin Durant's of the world, because man, the Rockets are for real, man. The Rockets are for real. Reed Shepard growing up right before our eyes. Alper Şengün continuing to, like, if there's any doubt about this cat, he continues to shatter it. Dudes are for real, bro. I'm gonna have more on the Rockets though, on the Rockets Collective, doing that on Tuesday, I believe. Yeah, Tuesday night. Rockets Collective on YouTube. Check us out wherever you get your podcast as well. I'm doing that with Will and Brado. We'll break down everything Rockets. I want y'all to really lock in and check that out. Also, the Locked On Rockets podcast with Jackson Gatlin, doing that later in the week. Those episodes usually appear on Fridays. You can check those out. So I'm going to save a little bit of the Rockets takes for those podcasts. I want you to participate in those as well. In the meantime, make sure that you are subscribed to the B Block podcast, wherever it is that you get your podcast, and that you check us out on YouTube as well. I am Brandon Scott. Again, I appreciate you for joining and being a part of the show. Leave a review, tell a friend, and until next time, I'll see you soon.